Even if you're not a gambling man, Houston being 14.5 favorites against the Raiders might be too tempting to pass up. Find out why on today's crossover episode.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, and welcome to the show, Vegas Raiders, to this crossover edition of the Locked On Texans, Locked On Raiders podcast. I'm your host, John Hickman. On the other side, that's your boy Q, and we're talking football from two different perspectives today. We're going to give our game prediction on this Locked On crossover show. Key matchups to this game. What should each team be ready for? Houston, ready for the playoffs. Raiders, ready for the draft. Two different stratospheres. However, they collide on Sunday in the afternoon. So what should each team know about the other in preparation for Sunday's matchups? And the biggest storylines, the chips have fallen, and that is a little bit of a nod to Chip Kelly no longer being in Vegas, and he was also linked to the Houston Texans. So we'll talk about the offense and how they'll be going up against one of the best defense in the NFL. Today's episode is a crossover Thursday show presented to you by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Into the Locked On Vegas Raiders, Locked On Texans fans, thank you for making us your first listen of the day, for being a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in the nation. Q.
What's happening?
Been a long time, man.
Yeah, no, it has. It has, man. It's exciting to be at this part of the season. I wish it was talking about a more competitive game, but, you know, here we are, right? You go through and you continue to go through the season as you do, and the Raiders have 2 wins, and the Texans look like they're, aiming for the playoffs, and the Raiders look like they're aiming for the offseason. So we still have plenty to talk about. I just wish it was a more competitive game upcoming.
And let's talk about why the Vegas Raiders hadn't been their best. The offseason, they did a complete overhaul. Brought in Pete Carroll, Geno Smith. You were expecting big things from Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, finishing his year off last year. Expected for him to be a major factor for this offense this year. You bring over Chip Kelly. He's not gone. What's just happened with this team? I mean, you got Max Crosby on the other side of the ball. And even with this team being as bad as they are, the defense isn't as bad as other teams are in the NFL. Right? They're kind of middle of the pack team right now on the defensive side of the ball. But offensively, what happened this year that allowed for the Vegas Raiders to fall out of any type of competitive contention?
They just weren't never on the same page. Chip Kelly, Pete Carroll, 2 different philosophies, 2 different people that hired them. So it was never like they were on the same page. And Pete Carroll said, yep, Chip Kelly is going to be the guy that's going to run this offense. I mean, he was basically giving Chip Kelly. It was like an arranged marriage. And, it's funny. I remember the week of the Super Bowl and being there in New Orleans for Radio Row and finding out that Chip Kelly is going to be the OC. And you mentioned it, that he was linked to the Texans. And I thought that that's where he was going. Then all of a sudden the Raiders upped the ante, paid him a lot of money and brought him in. So I thought this offense was going to be innovative. And it was everything but that, right? And Geno never seemed to be on the same page. The running game never got going because the offensive line was very bad. There was a lot of things that didn't click. Jacoby Myers never really seemed to be that effective of a player. Brock Bowers got injured early. The offensive line took a few hits with Colton Miller going down early. I mean, there was so many things that went along with it, but ultimately, starting out with Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly not being on the same page, that was the big dagger, I think, that started things. And then it just was like a 1,000 paper cuts after that. Just, and this is going wrong. Oh, and this is going wrong. Oh, and this is going wrong. So it was bleeding from all kind of sorts as far as I'm concerned with this offense, and never got going. That's why Chip Kelly's not there, and who knows what's going to happen and who's going to be there following the season.
Oh, man, that means maybe Pete Carroll's on the table to get out of there. Maybe Geno Smith, who knows?
And
but
everybody is under consideration. Everyone's under the microscope, the evaluation. Hell, the Raiders might look at me and be like, you know what? I don't know how that podcast is doing right now. Maybe they need a new guy there. I mean, I'm telling you, like, everybody's under the microscope at this stage of the game.
And on the flip side here, Houston started off extremely rough, but now Houston is winner of 6 straight. Obviously powered by the defense during this win streak, and it's been powered by the defense all year. Going up against the struggling, banged-up offensive line with the Raiders, an offense that can't find its own footing, this could be one of those games that get out of hand early.
Yep.
And D'Amico Ryans talked about it even after holding Arizona to 20 points, scoring 40 points on Sunday. He came out and said on Monday they didn't play up to their standard, right? And a lot of the defensive guys that I talked to in the locker room, a couple actually, they kind of felt the same way. And we left points out there on the board. We allowed them to score. We stayed on the field a little bit too long. And so this defense, in some ways, and when I say this word, it's in a good way because I'm using it in context of the conversation surrounding football, but they're a little insane. They didn't like their performance, right? And this is also a team that they played against in Arizona that has played, offensively. They put up points in the fourth quarter this year. That's where they're trailing a lot of those games, but that's where we've seen Arizona kind of stay around. They've been in a lot of one-score games. It wasn't a one-score game for Houston. They won by 3 possessions, but it wasn't enough. So going up against the Raiders, and my brain wants to say Vegas, Oakland. I always,
it's all good. Just say Raiders like everybody else does. I don't even say Vegas Raiders. I just say Raiders because
it just don't feel real yet to me. It doesn't feel like a situation that should have ever happened. But going up against the Raiders on Sunday afternoon here at home, I could see the Houston Texans defense taking the game personal to remind everybody who they are, because they didn't feel like they left out of the game Sunday, that they played up to the standard that they've been playing with all year. And they had takeaways in their game. They didn't allow the Arizona Cardinals to run for over 100 yards on the ground. Like, they did great things, but they were kind of pissed at themselves. So I think this is going to be an ugly game for the Raiders, a great game for the Houston Texans defense. And I think that could lead to an offensive day from Houston because the defense is going to give them the ball back. They're going to play with good field position. They're going to flip the field, and we'll see Houston's offense take advantage of that. Now, on the other side for the Raiders, what should the Houston Texans really be worried about if there's anything that could break this game away or keep this game close for the Raiders?
I think the Raiders are going to try to establish the run. I really do. And of course they've still got Brock Bowers. They got Ashton Genty. He hasn't had the rookie season that he expected or anyone expected for Ashton Genty. I think that will be probably the game plan. Try to keep the ball on the ground. See if they can get some headway and get some production against that Texans defense. But when you're going up against a defense like that's full of playmakers and dudes that get after the quarterback and guys that go make plays in the secondary, Petrie on the back end. I mean, there's so many playmakers all over the field. I know that they're relatively banged up looking at Wednesday's injury report, seeing all the guys that did not participate, but it's also going into week 16. So I kind of take that with a grain of salt, assuming that a lot of these guys they're going to ease into the rest of the week and be ready for the game on Sunday. But I mean, maybe a turnover or two. Maybe the Raiders find a way to get a turnover, have a short field, and they can score. But I mean, you see it. The scoring has been a problem, man. They're down to 14 points per game. They didn't get in the board last week against Philadelphia. And, I saw what the Cleveland Browns did up close and personal against the Raiders, right? They sacked them 10 times. So, the Texans have a way of getting to the quarterback. They've got bookends that have double-digit sacks each. So, I mean, it's not a good recipe. Like, I'd be lying to you if I said it was a good recipe for the Raiders and they had a real good chance in this game. But we know how the NFL is, and we know that there's a reason why they go out there and play. These guys do have pride. They're playing not only for themselves, but they're playing for the team and to see if they, are going to have a contract with the Raiders or another team in the league. Like, there's a lot of things for these guys to go out there and play for. So I'm not going to just say that it's 100% out of the question that they're going to, lose this game or win this game, whatever. It just it kind of is what it is. It's not a good matchup. That's for sure.
We got to talk about the key matchups for each team when we get back, and I think obviously what I'm going to point to is the offensive line. Not a good offensive line, so how will that matchup for Houston be in favor for Houston? We got more Texans and Vegas Raiders talk when we come back. Before we get to that conversation, Texans and Raiders fans, it's going to be somewhat of a rocky day, I think, for the Vegas Raiders, but you can also add some excitement to your Sunday with the holiday season happening right now. This is one of the best times for sports, and you got bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. And while we're making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is PrizePicks. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy action. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. Creating a lineup takes less than a minute. The app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. The early payout feature is a great bonus. When your lineup starts strong, you may get the option to cash out early. I'm playing a favor for a few of you Texan fans out there, I'm sure, this Sunday. Download the PrizePick app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks is good to be right. More Texans, more Raiders talk on this crossover episode. Q, we talked about the banged up offensive line, but what has it been about those tackles that's just been atrocious for the Raiders all year?
I mean, for the most part, you've got backups in there, right? I mean, Stone Forsythe has been holding down the left tackle spot for Colton Miller since week 4, and he's given up 11.5 sacks so far this season. DJ Glaze on the other side has given up 10 sacks this season. He's a second-year guy, and he's not very fast, and that's what always gets him beat is the move on the inside. Every time the Raiders are in the shotgun or they're in the pistol or whatever kind of formation they're in that's not under center, it sets up DJ Glaze in a bad position because these edge rushers will push him up the field and he tries to block, and then they cut in front of his face and then they get to the quarterback. So it's not a good recipe, not to mention the right guard has been out. Jackson Powers-Johnson has been out. He's been dealing with the ankle injury. Like I said, Colton Miller's out. The center has been flopped around a few different times. They started out with Jordan Meredith at that spot. Now and then they went to Will Putnam. Now they've got Alex Kappa at that position, who hasn't played the center position since his rookie year in preseason, but he's actually played it pretty good. Dylan Parham has not been playing well at the left guard position. I mean, it's not been a good offensive line. There's a reason why they've given up 54 sacks this season, right? That's been the big Achilles heel, and that's why Ashton Jeanty can't get rolling. So I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of changes in the offseason, but they still got 3 games to go to finish this thing off, including this one against the Texans, as you know, who gets to the quarterback early and often. So I do expect it to be a lot of stress and a lot of strain on the Raiders' offensive line on Sunday.
On the flip side for you, is there any matchup or unit for the Houston Texans that you have questions about?
I mean, not really. I always like to see how teams defend Brock Bowers because he's just that good, right? And so that's always something to pay attention to. Is Stingley going to be a guy that they go out there and put on him? Are they comfortable with just wherever Brock lines up, whoever's across from him? Jalen Petrie, trying to keep him from going and finding balls, see ball, get ball. That's what he does. He's been doing that since college, so I give him a lot of props. I mean, it's like I said, it's a bad matchup for the Raiders in this game. I am intrigued to see how Darian Porter, as a rookie DB out of Iowa State, how he matches up with the Texans wide receivers. Right, whoever goes and goes over to his side, and normally he's on the left side of the offense. You got Eric Stokes on the right side. I'm interested to see if they do like the Eagles did last week and target him, because they did go after him because he's a rookie. He's getting a lot of burn right now. So, how are they going to match up? And Eric Stokes talking to him in the locker room, he mentioned Nico Collins and said, hey, I got a hell of a matchup this week. So he already is aware of the wide receivers, the weapons that the Texans have. But I want to see how Darian Porter does, because it's important for him. Right? He's a rookie, and he's trying to establish himself as he could be a long-term solution at one of the corner spots for the Raiders. So how does he do in this matchup?
That's a good question, man. Anytime you get a young buck on Nico Collins, it could be trouble.
Yeah.
Right? Nico Collins is giving vets issues, right? We know that he's a player that can hurt teams down the field vertically. He's one of the better, if not the best, in breaking route receivers in the NFL. Houston has had an issue this year, and it hadn't been a major issue, but at times we can go moments in the game without seeing Nico Collins touch the ball, right? Mm-hmm. And it isn't necessarily an indictment on Nico Collins not being open, or it isn't just necessarily indicating that the cornerback isn't doing their job, or is doing their job. It's just the quarterback in the offense just needs to find him consistently throughout the game. So that matchup could be special for Nico Collins, simply because if he's doing things to vet cornerbacks in the NFL, I kind of wonder what he's going to do to the young man. Now, Ashton Jeanty hadn't had a great year, 3.5 yards per carry, 700 rushing yards. He has been somewhat helpful for the Raiders in the passing game. Is there anything, because Houston is down a couple of D tackles, and the D tackle unit for Houston has been extremely underpraised, but they have been far from underwhelming. They've been a very good group throughout the first 15 weeks of the season, but they're now down Tim Settle. They're also down Mario Edwards. So as we look at how Houston can kind of bounce back from that, has there been anything from Ashton Genty that has allowed this Vegas Raider offense to look good at any point this year that could impact how the Houston Texans play on Sunday?
Yeah, I think him receiving the ball at the backfield, I think that he does a good job with that. I mean, he's put a couple on the ground, but I think for the most part, he's anytime he's able to get in space, that's the thing. And the Raiders just haven't been able to get him in space consistently. You could tell that he's got it. He's got the wiggle in him. He's got the ability to come up with some big plays. And, he catches the ball. He's been in the end zone 4 times by way of the passing game. He's been in the end zone 4 times by way of the ground game. So he could find the end zone. It's just the Raiders.
It ain't been all bad for him, right?
No, it hasn't. But it's just opportunity hasn't been there. They haven't sustained drives. I mean, look, they had the ball for 20 minutes last week, right? And the Eagles had the ball for 39 minutes. So you're only getting 45 plays, maybe maximum. Against the Chiefs early in the season, they only had 30 plays. So it's not like they're getting enough cracks at it. So that's really been one of the biggest problems for Genty. He had 9 carries last week. Like, that's it. I mean, that's not going to do anything for you. So it's just more opportunities. That's onto the offensive line. It's up to the play callers to put him in a position to succeed. I know that, Trey McBride had a good game against the defense, and I'm sure that they're pretty salty about that, but that's the tight end position. So maybe Brock Bowers and Genty combined can do a little damage against the Texans. But it's just, if the Raiders didn't have so many problems sustaining drives, I would say this is, maybe an opportunity for them to show something offensively. They just haven't been able to do it consistently. So that's why I'm down on them, and that's why they're 14.5-point underdogs.
Yeah. Brock Bowers, one of the better tight ends in the NFL. I think, we can look at what the expectations were for him this year. Maybe not matching up for a lot of people, but it was tough on Houston last week with Trey McBride out there. McBride had a day, 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards, a ton of yak yards. And so when I look at what Brock Bowers can do for an offense that is struggling, that wants to find somewhat of a groove, you look at Pete Carroll teams, they don't necessarily quit on them. Right? They're going to fight to the end. And you also have a leader over there, Max Crosby, who I just love watching Crosby play football. Like, he's a top 5, I think, at his position. May not get talked about enough, in my opinion. You got guys like Myles Garrett. Even here in Houston, got Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. But Crosby is one hell of a leader, in my opinion, one hell of a football player. So this team is going to fight. We know that. And Brock Bowers could present issues for Houston. Now, how they guard it, Trey McBride last Sunday, I don't think they're going to have that same game plan against Brock Bowers. I think they're going to switch things up a little bit to give themselves a defensive advantage, because I don't think that they were proud of themselves after that game. They only limited the Cardinals to 20 points, a triple possession win, but they were, I think, pissed at themselves. And so I am curious to see how they go about guarding Brock Bowers and not allowing him to be a reason why the Raiders are in the game late in the game. So I'm interested in that.
Yeah, it'll be a good matchup. It really will. Brock Bowers, seeing how they defend him. Ashton Genty, can he start to get loose? And it looks like a game Geno Smith is going to come back. Last week, Kenny Pickett was the starting quarterback, but Geno practiced in full on Wednesday. Pete Carroll said they want to see what it looks like throughout the course of the week. But, I mean, look, he talked to the media, and you know how that goes. If the quarterback's talking to the media, that means that he's probably going to get the start come Sunday. So I'm expecting to see Geno Smith, and he hasn't been very good this year. Right. I mean, he's
had 14 interceptions, right?
Exactly. So, we'll see how it goes. But, Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty will definitely be the two that they lean on the most offensively. Can they have a rhythm? That'll be the big question moving forward.
Yeah. Also, he hadn't had a big game in a while, but Trey Tucker could present issues for Houston's defense. They've had problems this year with slot receivers. We're going to give our game predictions when we get back. More Locked On Texans and Locked On Raiders on the way. Texan fans, Raider fans, thank you for sticking around to this point of the show. We really appreciate it. Make sure you do your Spotify wrap-ups. And shout out to our everydayers from the Raiders or the Texans Himalayas. Thank you for making Locked On Texans, Locked On Raiders your first listen of the day. Thank you for making the Locked On Network your number one sports podcast network. You're already living your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad free. Join the Everyday Club and get Locked On Texans or Locked On Raiders at lockedontexans.supercast.com or lockedonraiders.supercast.com for $5 or $5 a month or $50 a year. Again, visit lockedontexanssupercast.com or lockedonraiders.supercast.com. Our game predictions. Q, what you got?
I mean, I just think that the Raiders are going to take this L. I think Houston will win this game. I mean, look, they need this game. They want this game. They need to, keep on winning. They've got playoff aspirations. The Raiders, they're looking to the offseason. I'll tell you what, Raider Nation doesn't want the Raiders to win any more games. I can promise you that. I mean, I've had those conversations already. Raider Nation wants to see the Raiders lose out the rest of the season and end up with that number one pick so they can go and have the chance to do what the Texans did a couple seasons ago where they went and got their quarterback to be their franchise quarterback in C.J. Stroud. The Raiders want to have that opportunity. At least Raider Nation wants them to have that opportunity. That doesn't mean the players in the locker room don't want to win. I know they do. I don't know what the GM, what their, the front office is feeling and how they'd like the season to end, but I'm sure ending up with the number one overall pick, John Spytek wouldn't be too upset about that either. So, yeah, I mean, look, I just think Houston's a better team. Their defense is great. It's a championship defense, and their offense is coming along, right? I mean, there's one point where their offense stunk, and now their offense is playing really well. Like you said, the 40 points that they put up against the Cardinals, they seem like they're getting it together. C.J. Stroud's playing a lot better. I just think this is a terrible matchup for the Raiders, and that's why they'll get the win. But I mean, again, the Texans will get the win, but it's just, I mean, again, they go out there and they play, and we've seen some crazy things happen, especially this year in the NFL.
Is there a player y'all want with y'all first pick? Y'all looking at Mendoza, or do you want to trade out of it?
I think most people are looking at Mendoza. I'm not 100% sold that that's what the team is doing. I like Mendoza. I like what he's been able to do in the clutch, coming back against Penn State and getting the dub, seeing what he did against Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, even beating Iowa. Oregon, that was a big win. I thought there's moments where he's been really good looking as far as the quarterback prospect, but it's nothing that's been like overwhelming, like when there was Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels and Drake May and all those quarterbacks. I don't think this draft is really, to kind of shaping up to look like that right now. But I mean, if you get a chance to go get your quarterback and the team believes that that's the quarterback that they could build around, by all means, go get him. Just like I said, like the Texans did when they picked C.J. Stroud number 2 overall.
It does feel like an underwhelming draft altogether, so I'm interested to see how you guys rebuild that team. But my game prediction, you're right. I think this is a game that could possibly get out of hand and be done really by the start of the third quarter, midway through that quarter. Houston's defense is taking it personal again after last week. They didn't feel like they played to their standard. D'Amico Ryan said that exactly. And then on the offensive side of the ball, I like this matchup for Houston because it could be another game where they can stack a great performance. Like, they hadn't had a lot of that this year, at least not for a full game. They got it going against Tennessee in their first win of the year in the fourth quarter. They followed up a full game against Baltimore, but it was a quarter and then a game. I want to see them do it for back-to-back 4 quarters. And so when I look at what the Las Vegas Raiders presents as issues, I don't think that those problems would be, big enough to stop Houston's offense. I think whenever Houston run the ball well, they score 32 points per game when they rush for over 100. And so that is a formula for Houston to get things going. The play action, the boot, they feed off of that. And then also, there's not a player over there that I think can hold or stop Nico Collins. If anybody stops Nico Collins, it'll be Houston not getting him the ball. And we know that they can't afford to do that. So I look at this game as a groove game where Houston can continue to feel themselves, get that groove going into the playoffs, more so going into the game against the Chargers that following Saturday, because that's another playoff push team right now. They're currently in the wild card spot. If Houston beats them, that really plays into their favor, because if they don't catch the AFC South champs right now, currently the Jags, they'll still secure their playoff seeding. And so Houston's offense needs to come alive, and I think the defense will give them turnovers and great field position in order to do that. If they are a little bit better in the red zone, they feel like they left plays and points out there on the board, then this game could be over by halftime.
Well, don't let them get caught looking ahead. Don't let them look ahead. They better be laser focused on one game at a time, brother. Don't let them get looking to the Chargers next Saturday, because if they do, you never know how things happen. Look, I'll tell you, and I'm not thinking that D'Amico Ryan's team will do this, but, man, there was a time last year when the Raiders went into Baltimore, beat the Ravens. It was a great win. They came back home. Carolina Panthers didn't have no wins. They were terrible, just benched their quarterback, and they got mollywopped by the Panthers. And so you can't look ahead and get too excited about what they're doing one game at a time, which, like I said, I think D'Amico Ryans will have them laser focused. But, yeah, man, they better be one game at a time and get ready to roll, because they got something special going, especially with that defense.
They do, and I'm going to say this. I think, to your point, D'Amico Ryans ain't letting no side of the ball look ahead. You know one thing he said? In the post-game press conference Sunday, he was asked about the 6-game win streak. He said, I didn't even know we won 6 games in a row. Now, obviously,
right,
he's just playing, but that's just how focused this unit has been. This team has been all together. And D'Amico Ryans don't play about that. 1 week at a time.
It's good
Every opponent is there, that opponent that need to focus on for that week. So you're absolutely right. Thank you guys, Locked On Texans and Raiders fans, for listening to today's show. Follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Q, where can they find you, man, on social media and all the great work that you do?
Yeah, man, that's your boy Q254. Put out the podcast each and every day. You need to know a little bit more about the Raiders. You know we got you Monday through Friday. That's how we do on the Locked On Podcast Network. We do a great job.
Yes, we do. Now the #1 sports podcast network in the nation. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.
Boom.